Hello, welcome to La Excellence. Welcome to the Hindu News Analysis. As RB sir is busy, I am recording the video for today. I will be recording tomorrow also. From day after, RB sir will continue. Right, today we have 13 important articles. Our first article is Oxford vaccine. Oxford vaccine is 70% effective. But there are other companies which have already claimed that they have got 90% efficiency. For example, Pfizer. Pfizer has declared that it has got 90% efficiency. And then there is another company, Moderna. This company said they have achieved 94% effectiveness in phase 3 trials. So Oxford Union has said that we achieved 70% of efficiency. But according to the statistics, it is said that if any vaccine achieves 65% in the case of COVID 19, so this can be considered as a good vaccine. So, according to that statistic, that prediction, 70% effectiveness can be considered as a good indicator. Now, what do we have to learn from this? Do we have to learn which company has released which vaccine? No. Do we have to learn when each company has released the vaccine? No. Then what is it that we have to learn from this particular article? We have to know what are the platforms that these companies have used. What are the technologies that these companies have used to manufacture these vaccines or to produce these vaccines? Let us understand that. Right. Oxford Union or Oxford University, along with this company AstraZeneca, it has used a technique called viral vector vaccine technology. The technology is called as viral vaccine technology. And Moderna and Pfizer, they both used RNA technology, or these are called as RNA vaccines. RNA vaccines are also called as modern vaccines. Now let us understand how each of these works. Now, in the viral vector vaccines, let me highlight this. In the viral vector vaccines, so there is a particular viral vector that is used which is considered harmless. For example, in this case, they are using adenovirus. Adenovirus is not harmful for humans. So they take this particular adenovirus using genetic engineering. The SARS-CoV-2 from this COVID virus, we take a particular gene and we add it to this particular RNA of this particular virus. This is a non-replicating viral vector. That means vector means vehicle. This is non-replicating means once it enters into the body, that is human body, it won't replicate. So that is the meaning of non-replicating viral vector vaccine. Here, this virus is used as a vector and only one gene we have added into it using genetic engineering. Yes, then we introduced it into the human body. And in human bodies, there are certain cells called as presenting cells, antigen presenting cells. When this particular virus enters into the human body, this antigen presenting cell, it separates the antigen from this particular pathogen that entered into human body. Then this particular antigen in this particular shape, so this has been detected by a type of cell called T cells. What is a T cell? See, there are certain cells called lymphocytes. These lymphocytes are categorized into two types. One is T cell, another one is B cell. T and B, two types of cells are there. These two are part of our immune system. T cell, which is called as helper T cell, because in T cells there are multiple types. Helper T cells, they identify this particular antigen that has entered into human body, and then it sends signal to two types of cells. One is cytokine cells or cytokine T cells. Second type is B cells. So B cells, they produce antibodies. When this particular helper cell identified this particular antigen, with regard to that, B cells, they produce antibodies. These antibodies, they bind to these particular antigens and they destroy that particular one. That way, the immune system responds. On the other hand, the cytokine in T cells, they destroy the damaged cells in our body. So in two ways, our immune system fights. The viral vector is entering into our body and antibodies or antigen is detected by helper T cell. This is how viral vector vaccines function. But then Moderna and Pfizer, they have used a different technology called as RNA vaccine technology. Let us understand what is this RNA vaccine technology. In RNA vaccine, we take a small piece called mRNA, also known as messenger RNA. This mRNA is placed inside a lipid cell. Lipid cell in general, layers, the nuclear membranes, cell membranes are made up of lipids. So we place the mRNA which encodes, which gives rise to a particular antigen. So we place it and then we send it into our human cells. In our human cells, they replicate. mRNA self-replicates, and then based on the production of antigen, the antigen presenting cell, they identify these antigens. Okay, some antigen has entered. And then similarly, whatever we have explained, the same process follows here. T helper cell identifies the antigen, sends the signal to cytokinin T cells, and also sends the signal simultaneously to B cells. They produce antibodies. These cells, they make sure that the infected cells are dead. So this is how mRNA vaccines and then viral vector vaccines are different. In viral vector vaccines, as these are not replicating, we need to provide a large amount of it as in the form of vaccine to be effective. mRNA vaccines, as we said, these are also called as modern vaccines. These vaccines, they require a lot of safety measures, lot of storage safety, because here mRNA is synthesized artificially. Here we are sending a biological material inside our human body. Here we have synthesized it chemically, we have made it artificially, and we are sending it. So for the stability of mRNA, we need to maintain ultra cold temperatures. So that's why both are different. As of now, mRNA vaccines have not yet been approved. There are many vaccines that have developed using this technology, but not yet been approved. If Pfizer and Moderna, if any one of them or both of them, if they get the permission, they are going to be the first companies which are using functional RNA vaccines. Oxford Union is this one, viral vector vaccine. Moderna and Pfizer, they are using RNA vaccines. I think this is clear. Right? If you have questions regarding this, please ask us in the comment section. The next article, very, very important article with regard to our mains, polity. So what is the issue? Kerala government has released an ordinance through the governor. So we have this article known as Article 213, wherein governor has the authority, while the legislature is in recess, it can issue ordinances. But of course, by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister. And recently Kerala has issued an ordinance which has introduced a certain provision to Kerala Police Act. Kerala Police Act. Into this Kerala Police Act, they have introduced a provision which said that, see, if there are any defamatory content in the internet made against the government or against anyone, they can be arrested. They can be put in the jail. They can be given certain kind of fine as a punishment. That is what they have included. And then many people, including the opposition parties, many NGOs, they criticize this act, saying that, see, what is considered defamatory? Who defines which is defamatory? Police might say a normal criticism as a defamatory comment and they might arrest the activist or someone. So this can be a death blow to the freedom of speech and expression. This is what is the contention of many opposition parties, journalists, civil rights groups. And then the government said, yes, we are going to keep this particular law on hold. We will seek the amendments and we will debate on it. Then only we will try to implement it. If you go to the background of this particular issue with regarding internet regulation, etc., there is a famous case called Shreya Singhal case. Shreya Singhal versus Union of India case, very, very important. In this particular case, already a section of Kerala Police Act was struck down. What is this particular case? There was a provision called Section 66A under Information Technology Act 2000. This section said that we can criminalize such messages through the computer resource which is offensive, which is menacing, which causes annoyance, inconvenience, danger, etc. etc. Then Supreme Court interpreted in 2015 it as an unconstitutional provision because it violates Article 19 as well as Article 21. Read this. In Shreya Singhal versus Union of India case, Supreme Court has said this. What they mentioned? Section 66A of Information Technology Act is unconstitutional because it is violating this, and whenever we want to provide certain exceptions to freedom of speech and expression, we have a separate article under our constitution, that is Article 19(2). So why can't the government introduce reasonable restrictions under this? Why do the government go for such arbitrary provisions? So that's the judgment. And then it said that, see, government can ask the platforms, let's say Google, Facebook, etc., to remove certain objectionable content. That is valid. But Section 66A, which explicitly removes the freedom of speech and expression to the citizens, is considered a violation to the Constitution. That's why Supreme Court has struck down that particular provision, and now people are criticizing that the recent amendment to the Kerala Police Act is a violation to freedom of speech and expression and is against the Shreya Singhal versus Union of India judgment. That is why the government said that yes, we are keeping it on hold. That is the essence of this. Next very important article, this is regarding the economy. Recently there is a working group, internal working group of RBI. This committee is headed by P.K. Mohanty. What this committee has recommended? This committee has recommended 5 major things with regard to banking sector. What are they? First thing is, allow the corporate sector into the banking. There is a huge criticism against it. This entire article is regarding that only. So this committee said that anyway, corporate sector, they have deep pockets. Deep pockets means they have huge money which they can spend. So they have deep pockets which they can invest in the banking sector, which can increase the depth of banking in India. That's why P.K. Mohanty committee said that allow corporate sector into Indian banking. But what is the criticism against it? Already corporate sector, it is taking loans, huge scale loans from the banks, and they are not repaying it. See, what if they take the borrowers, depositors' money, use it for their business, and then not pay to them? What if they say we went bankrupt and not pay to these customers? Will it serve the purpose? That is the criticism. Already corporate sector, it has its own vested interest. So what if it defaults? So this particular probability is huge. Already defaulting from the particular corporate sector is huge. That's the criticism. But this is the reason why they have recommended it. Next. And this committee has also recommended to convert NBFCs into banks. What are NBFCs? Non-banking financial companies. Non-banking financial companies which have 10 years of experience. So you can convert them into banks so that they will have more flexibility. They will have more funding. Anyway, NBFC sector is facing crisis in India. That is one more recommendation of P.K. Mohanty committee. But then the criticism is already NBFC sector is in crisis. If we make them as banks, the entire banking sector NPA will rise. So that is going to be bad for the entire economy, for the entire banking system. So this has also been criticized. Next one, minimum capital requirement. To start a bank, there are certain minimal requirements. For the normal banks, as of now, it is 500 crores. Now this particular committee has asked to increase it to 1,000 crore rupees. 1,000 crore rupees. And for small financial banks, etc., wherein the requirement is less, this committee has recommended to increase it to further higher level. Next, the another recommendation made by this committee is payment bank needs to be converted into small finance banks. These two are called differential banking. Payment banks and then small financial banks, these are called differential banking systems. Why are they called differential banking systems? Because they serve for the different objects other than the conventional banking system. They said payment banks are unable to take the deposits because of the mandate. So why can't we convert them into small finance banks? That will increase the financial inclusion in the country. So what they recommended is increase the financial inclusion by increasing or by converting the payment banks into small financial banks. This is the fourth recommendation of this committee. And then the fifth recommendation is non-operative financial holding company. Let's say a big corporate company has many small companies. So why can't we have a non-operative financial holding company? Why can't this company start a bank? So this can be one more possibility wherein we can get more money into the banking sector. These are the five important recommendations. There are other many recommendations are there, but these are the five issues that are there in news and which are very important. That's why we are understanding them here. So with regard to these five others, especially there is an article by Raghuram Rajan and our ex-deputy governor Viral Acharya. They said that, see, the connected lending. What is the meaning of this word? Very important word, Andy. Connected lending. Connected lending means the company which is connected to that particular bank getting more money. That is called connected lending. So connected lending is already there in the Indian banking sector. With this, if we can implement this corporate sector into the banking sector, it is going to increase it further. This can cause a disastrous situation in India. So as of now, even the independent regulators worldwide are not looking for this. So India should not move forward with this, at least in the present situation where NPAs are rising, where we are experiencing huge scale crisis in banking sector. Especially we have seen Lakshmi Vilas Bank crisis, etc. Sir, no, that's why they said that we need to remember these things and we need to remember the criticism against each point. Very important article only. The next important article is with regard to COVID-19 and public expenditure. According to this, there is a research which have explained that if there is more public expenditure means government's spending over the healthcare. So if there is more public expenditure, it has led to less mortality. If you take the example of Kerala, though they have more number of cases, especially in the recent days, mortality rates are less. Why? Because public expenditure comparatively is more. When the public expenditure comparatively is more, so in the initial stage itself, they can be provided with the, let's say, a case, a particular patient have come to the hospital and he is seeking the help or he is seeking the medical intervention. If there is more spending from the government side, at the earlier stage only, the patient would be provided with intensive care units, etc. That can reduce the mortality rates. So based on the observation from various states in India in the recent months, so it is concluded that there are certain states where the growth, that is per capita income, is more, but the healthcare expenditure is less. So growth versus health argument, very important. Growth versus health argument. So they invested more in the physical infrastructure, but not in the social infrastructure like hospitals, etc. So wherein, though they have more financial capabilities, they are unable to control the mortality rates. But other states, even though they have very less financial resources, as they were able to invest more in the healthcare infrastructure, mortality rates have reduced. This thing can be applied to various situations. So they say, see, we are experiencing another crisis in the form of air quality issue, especially in Delhi, in the adjoining areas, we are experiencing air quality catastrophe. In such context, what is the government doing? Government is paying money to the farmers to not to burn. But ethically, whoever burns, they should pay the money. Ethically, they are polluting, they should pay the money. But in reverse, government is paying money to not to pollute or not to not to go for stubble burning. In such context, see, if we are not creating awareness, if we are not taking the people into consideration, if the people are not proactive, limiting the environmental damages from such things would be very difficult. So, the entire political process that we are following with regard to stubble burning, etc., is not ethical. 2, is not financially viable. So, government should see for alternatives. Here, in this case, government should spend more on health expenditure. Here, in this case, government should see the alternatives other than this. So, this is about this article. Essentially, this article says that if there is more public expenditure, it is leading to less mortality in the states. The next article is regarding K-curve dynamics. So let us understand what is this K-curve. In our economy, there are many curves. We say V, C curve, J curve, L curve, K curve. What are all these things? Let us understand. First of all, what is the context of this article? It is with regard to banking health. This is one of the very important articles to write a quality answer in your mains examination. There is a particular indicator called P by BV. P by BV ratio. What is this? This is price to book value ratio. So let us understand what is this price to book value ratio. Let us understand what is this K curve. Let us understand how K curve explains the financial status of our banking system and other financial institutions in India. So let us understand how our financial system is experiencing a crisis, how can we address it, and how this ratio can help us. In general, if you observe in UPSC mains examination, so if we can use such things, it adds value. Plus, in our prelims examination, they are testing us in our basics. So they might simply ask, what is P by BV ratio? What is its importance? And then the examiner can give 4 options and we need to identify one. So that's very important. And remember, there is one more word called alpha bank. So let us understand what is the meaning of this term also. Alpha bank, how K curve explains financial system's health, and what is P by BV ratio. 3 things. First of all, let us understand this concept. P by BV ratio. Price means the market price of a share. So a particular company, let's say company A has a share value, one single unit of share value of some value in the market by book value. It means in their accounting books. So what is the book value that they have mentioned? Book value changes every year, right? So in the book value of the share A and market value of share A. So if we go through this particular thing, in general, book value doesn't change much frequently, but market share value of this particular any company can change frequently through stock exchanges. If this particular ratio, that is market price by book value ratio, if this is greater than 1, that means people are believing, the market is believing in that company if it is greater than 1. If it is equal to 1, the market sentiment is not much there. If it is less than 1, that means the market sentiment has gone down. For example, in this Lakshmi Vilas Bank, in this case, the P by BV, this particular ratio has gone down to less than 1 because the investors thought that it is not worth even to have this particular thing at a minimum value also. Let us sell it. That's why P by BV ratio has reduced. If there are certain companies which have P by BV value at 7, at 4, at 3, etc., that means the market sentiment on that particular company is good. So indirectly we can say that if P by BV ratio is good, then investors are interested in it. So we can expect more investment in it. If P by BV ratio is less, investor sentiment is worse. So the investment is not going to come. So that's the indicator of this particular one, P by BV ratio for banking sector. For any sector in financial field, this is very important. For the banking sector, especially for the private banks, this value is more. Though they are experiencing high NPAs, the P by BV ratio is higher as compared to public banks. Why? Why? Because the governance structure of public banks is in such a way that the investors believe that even if we invest in it, the governance is not going to get reformed. So there is no use. Maybe private banks might turn around. That's why they are showing more interest towards private banks rather than public banks. Now, what is this word K curve? K curve means, see, so there is an economic slowdown. In this phase, recession phase, we are in recession phase now. Economic slowdown. Once we start recovering out of the same field, let's say in the banking sector, there are certain banks which are growing faster, but there are certain banks which are going further down. So this disjunction or this thing is called, this difference is called as K curve. So this symbolizes K, right? So that's why this is also called as K curve. K curve means some parts of the economy is recovering, some parts are not recovering. In the banking sector, we are experiencing it. In the NBFC sector, we are experiencing it. So, what is the way forward then? This particular article says that alpha bank means big banks, very huge banks. So, by merger, by strengthening the banks financially, if we can have alpha banks, huge banks, which can recover fast, and then other banks which have less efficiency, they will go down and they will go to bankruptcy or whatever. So they won't be there after few years. So creating more and more alpha banks, that will help us in NBFC sector, in banking sector. So this is K-shaped recovery. And why is it important? Because ultimately the stronger ones emerge, the weaker ones submerge. So that thing should be there, and P by BVB, this ratio should be increased. Then only market sentiment will increase. So I hope the conceptual clarity is there with regard to this. So go through these things with regard to V-shaped recovery, U-shaped recovery. If you have questions and queries, please ask us. Let us understand the next article. This article is about Asian century. What is this? There are many thinkers who believe that 21st century belongs to Asia. So that's why this is called as Asian century. India, China, these countries are growing. In such context, the recent RCEP, a Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, is seen as consolidation of economic power of China. China is the dominant player in this RCEP. There are 15 member countries, and then time for Asian century. So we want to compete with China, and we have certain concerns with regard to RCEP. That's why we didn't join. This article says that India wants to achieve Atmanirbhar, that is self-reliance. That is why we didn't join. See, in the last 1 week there are many articles which supported India keeping out of this particular RCEP, and which has criticized India's stand. So you need to know both of them. I hope you are following the current affairs regularly. So write all the issues at one place. Today we are going to see the supporting arguments of India's stand. So some time back, yesterday we had an article with regard to criticism of this particular stand of India. Right, first let us understand why people are supporting this. Because there are reasons, genuine reasons for India. There is an unfavorable trade balance with the other countries in the grouping. Service sector, which is our strong sector, is kept out of the negotiations. Auto trigger mechanism, whenever China or any other country dumps something over a particular value, then we need to have this auto trigger mechanism wherein we can stop those imports. Such mechanism is not placed while negotiating in this particular agreement. Then China, we have a danger of dumping of goods from China that can damage our domestic industry. Rules of origin, maybe some other country might procure from China and they might send us these goods at a cheaper cost. That can also be a problem. Data exclusivity, especially for e-commerce, etc. They are asking for data exclusivity. For IPRs, they are asking for exclusivity in the grouping. So we said no. So in this article, it is said that to achieve Atmanirbhar Bharat, we need to be self-reliant. Yes, for that domestic industry needs to be increased. So the decision to not to join in RCEP is in a way good. Anyway, with the many countries in this grouping, RCEP grouping, we already have FTA. So if we can improve that, if we can improve on that, and if we can go for making agreements, trade agreements with USA, European Union, that would help us more, because those are our markets. We are exporting to them. But in this case, if we make the agreements with them, we are importing from them. So having agreements with USA, European Union would be good for us strategically plus economically. That is the gist of this article. And in the emerging world order, India needs to be Atmanirbhar, self-reliant. The next issue is with regard to weaker germs, stronger cures. That means weaken the germ, anything, let's say COVID or anything, and strong, make sure that the cure is stronger. So in this context, they are talking about COVID-19. Slowly we are developing vaccines. So we are going to win over it. But there is one more danger that we are lurking around. That is AMR. antimicrobial resistance. What is that antimicrobial resistance? Let's understand this concept. There are certain microbes. In general, in the entire, let's say this is the entire bacterial culture. So in this entire thing, to fight against bacteria, we use antibiotics, yes or no? Even after using them, there is certain bacteria which still survives, which inherently has resistance. But if we use that medicine improperly, irregularly, without any proper measures, then the entire strain of bacteria might experience the resistance, might have experience. The resistant bacteria can change the normal bacteria into antimicrobial resistant bacteria. That way, even after taking the medicine, let's say antibiotics, etc., the disease might not, the bacteria might not get killed, so it gets adapted to that particular medicine. That we call as AMR, antimicrobial resistance, and the world is experiencing this already. So if you understand the statistics regarding this, AMR is estimated to cause 10 million deaths annually by 2050. Understand the facts. Unless some actions are taken, and it can result in 7.5% reduction in livestock production, and it can negatively impact the GDP by 3.5%. It can reduce the GDP by 3.5%. So this is such a dangerous thing. For that thing, already under WHO, World Health Organization, we have a plan called Global Action Plan on AMR, that is antimicrobial resistance, under which we said that almost 80 countries have said that yes, we are going to follow a particular policy through which we are going to reduce this antimicrobial resistance. For that, India also has a plan, National Antimicrobial Resistance Plan. Under that plan, we are also implementing measures. But remember, there is a concept called One Health. What is this One Health concept? This is given by WHO. One Health, it says that, see, we need to protect the environment and we need to protect our own self. So if we destroy the environment, for example, in this case, COVID-19, this is zoonotic disease. So zoonotic diseases are increasing. So if we destroy the environment, we are going to put ourselves into harm. So under One Health, in this thing, economy, society, environment, all should be in line. So that way we can reduce the interference with the environment, which can reduce the antimicrobial risk. So this is one of the biggest challenges, so we need to face it. So that is the overall strategy. There are other things what we can do: awareness, strict regulation, law, and strict implementation, more research into new drugs, etc. These are all the issues. But overall, in this article, we are explaining on what is One Health concept and what are the statistics related to this antimicrobial resistance. Very important article. And the next issue is a simple issue. The government is asked to fast track the green nod. Green nod means for any project of certain money, the environmental ministry need to give the permission. So we call them as environmental clearances. So there are certain projects which require environmental appraisals. Government, especially the Ministry of Environmental Affairs, recently issued certain guidelines to accelerate, means to increase the speed of the environmental clearances. And under this particular ministry, there is a committee called Expert Appraisal Committee. This Expert Appraisal Committee takes the projects case by case and go through the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment, and approves the cases. See, we need to remember one thing. Yes, we need rapid development. But in the name of rapid development, if we give approval to all the projects, almost, see the statistics, almost 100% approval rates are there for the environmental projects. Especially now we are experiencing economic slowdown. So government wants to increase the speed of the progress of various investments, etc. So it can further dilute the environmental clearances. But then over a long term, it is going to cause harm. So in this context, what we can say, we need to balance out development as well as the economy, development as well as the environment. So this is called as sustainable development. This should be promoted. Environmental ministry is responsible to regulate, not to promote the speedy environmental clearances. Yes or no? The mandate of what is the mandate of environmental ministry? It should see and it should protect the environment, not promote the growth and development. It's not finance ministry, it's environmental ministry. Yes. The next article is with regard to international relations. So there is a recent image which showed that Bhutan border village is located in disputed land. That is what is claimed by China. There is a place called Doklam Plateau. It's a tri-junction between India, China and Bhutan. So nearby there is a village. So Bhutan said that's our place. So that's not a we didn't have any village in China's territory. China doesn't have any village in our territory. It's ours. That's the clarification given by Bhutan recently. But then recently Chinese media said that this Doklam is a conflict territory. This is a conflict territory. This is located in the Tri-Junction area where we had the Doklam crisis in 2017. And now India is making the Bhutan to not to come for the agreement for the peaceful settlement in this area. And then it says that in this particular place, Bhutan has established a village which is in the disputed territory. So which is ours. That's the China's contention. That is ours. But Bhutan has placed it. But Bhutan said no, that is ours. Doklam Plateau is ours. That's near Tri-Junction area. So that's the contention again. So let us see what happens. Doklam Plateau, remember that name. The next article is China is preparing to send a probe to bring back lunar rocks. So lunar means moon related. So China is sending Chang'e 5 probe. Chang'e 5 is the name. So their mythological Chinese moon goddess. So on that name they have named that probe as Chang'e 5. So they are going to send it. And this mission, if it becomes successful, so it's going to launch the orbiter, lander and rover. This rover collects the samples and brings back that sample to the earth. So if successful, China would become the third country. Already two countries have done that. USA and Soviet Union. They have collected the moon rocks, moon samples and brought back to the earth successfully. China will also bring back 2 kg of surface material from previously unexplored place called as Oceanus Procellarum. This is the place which is the meaning of that is Ocean of Storms. So from that place, China's Chang'e 5 mission is going to get us these samples. And it also wants to have its own space station by 2022. And India also wants to have our own space station by 2030. But China wants to have its own space station by 2022. And it wants to send humans to moon in nearby, maybe before 2030. The next article is one of the emerging issues in technology as well as the defense. That is drones, spy drones. Especially drones are used to bomb, warfare, etc. In all these areas, the drones are being used. Recently, Armenia, Azerbaijan, these two are southern Caucasian countries. Between these two countries, there is a small region, Nagorno-Karabakh. For this particular Nagorno-Karabakh region, these two countries went on a war, and Azerbaijan used technologically superior drones, etc., and it won in the war. So, from that time, in the last 2 weeks only, drone warfare and drone war, this has become a major issue. Before that also, many terror organizations, many groups, they started using drones to supply the arms and ammunition, to provide some information to the other side. Right? In many ways, drones are used in these activities. Now, why this is news? In Afghanistan, Taliban are using these drones to drop the bombs. Already we know that USA and Taliban, they are holding peace talks in Doha. They said we are going to remain peaceful, but still they are using these drones and they are launching bombings on these drones. Now there should be a regulation There should be a technology to control this thing. Already from 2016, many techniques, many drone techniques are used by Taliban IS jihadists in many areas to carry the explosives, etc., using these drones. So drone warfare is one of the important things. So how do we control it? How to regulate it? That's going to be a very big question. The next article is single window system for FDI approval. See, earlier we had a separate committee to approve the FDIs. FDI means foreign direct investment. So earlier we had Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. This used to approve the large scale FDIs, and other ministries used to approve the small FDI amounts. But then the government has done away with this model, and each ministry individually is now approving the FDI proposals that are coming into that particular domain. Now our finance minister says this is going to it is causing the coordination issues. We are going to have single window approval system for FDI, which can bring in investment. Under the single window system, what happens? See, under single window system, regulators, policymakers, facilitators, all will be available from one point at one point. So investment becomes very, very easy, and all the approvals can be through the digital systems. So that way transparency, efficiency, speediness, etc., can be ensured in this particular area. That's the statement given by our finance minister. Not it been done. This is a proposal. Our final article is with regard to renewable energy capacity. Adani company has said that they are going to add 2 gigawatt capacity cell and module capacity. What is the meaning of cell here? Cells, that is PV cells, solar PV cells, photovoltaic cells, and then modules. So the entire assembling material. So the Adani company said that we have a particular plant and we are upgrading it. So by 2021, our capacity is going to increase. We are going to add 2 gigawatt additional cell capacity and module capacity at this particular plant called Mundra. Mundra is a place in Gujarat. As of now, we are importing these solar panels, etc., from China. From China, we are importing the solar modules. So by 2021, according to this particular company, our solar panels, solar modules, solar PV cells, they become more cost effective, and there will be more price competitiveness, that is price parity with China. This is going to be an important thing. This is going to help in our renewable energy targets. So what are our renewable energy targets? We want to achieve 125 gigawatts renewable energy by 2022. We want to achieve 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. To reach such huge levels of renewable capacity, we need to have our own domestic industry, and this helps in developing the domestic solar industry, because India has huge potential with regard to solar power. So if we have vibrant domestic industry, cost effective things, then solar energy can become much more cheaper, and more people will move towards it, will invest in it. So that way it helps. Very important. So this is about today's discussion. If you have any questions, queries, please let us know in the comment section. All the very best. Thank you very much.